I'd like to tell everyone, welcome to Mike Talks New York Sports. I am your host, Michael Walters, and today I'm going to be talking about the Carl Anthony Towns trade and the expectations for the Knicks this season. And later on in the episode, I am going to give a brief overview on the Nets and Simmons really can perform at a high level again. So, obviously, last episode, I was talking about the Knicks' center problems and the possibility of Julius Randle being the center replacement for Robinson. But what I had found out hours after is that the Knicks have actually traded for Carl Anthony Towns. I was shocked when I heard about this trade because I was like, man, you're telling me I literally just recorded this like hours before this trade will be announced, like I was surprised. So it is good to have Carl on this team. Like I remember like earlier this week when the trade was still being finalized in the Knicks media day, I was like, man, is Carl Anthony Towns going to make an appearance? There was a picture of him outside the practice facility, but he couldn't go inside and converse with his new teammates, obviously because the trade was not finalized yet. But I remember the reporters had asked Brunson, like, they were like, "Oh, do you know about the Knicks trade for Carl Anthony Towns?" And he was like, "Who the hell is Carl?" But I know, obviously, the Knicks players, they knew that Carl Anthony Towns was being traded, but they couldn't say anything then. So it was a little funny in the beginning. So it's like now it's like I think yesterday, it's like I saw that Karl Anthony Towns finally made it to Charleston, and he's practicing with the Knicks players. He already knows a couple of the Knicks players already because he was teammates with a couple of them, so there is a little bit of chemistry. So I am interested to seeing how good he does with this group of Knicks players because with the acquisition of Karl Anthony Towns, or like everybody says, Cat, he gives the Knicks three-point shooting, rim protection, durability, aggressiveness, even though a lot of people have been saying that he is a little soft, but I feel like since he's back nearby his hometown, I feel like he is going to jump, like, he's going to have that evolution. He's going to become the beast that he has been he's gonna become the beast that he has to well, you kinda understand what I'm trying to say, like, he has to become that alpha dog, that alpha male that he needs to be in order to lead this team to a championship. So, I feel like he is gonna prove the doubters wrong. Like, obviously, people are keep on saying despite the trade, the Sixers and the Celtics are way better than the Knicks. But what I can tell you is that the Knicks are clearly the better team than the Philadelphia 76ers. Like, last season, they literally took down a practically healthy Sixer team with with basically Brunson, Anunoby, and a few other key rotation players like Hart and DiVincenzo and McBride. They were not even fully healthy. They missed Randall throughout the entire playoffs, and they managed to knock out an almost healthy Sixer roster. So, and now you got Mikal Bridges and Karl Anthony Towns. You are going to annihilate the 76ers. Like, I already see that happening. Even the Celtics, even like the Celtic players, they feel like, "Oh, yeah, the Knicks can't touch their level." I feel like in opening nights when the Knicks do face the Celtics, I feel like it is going to be a massacre. Like, it's probably gonna be some fireworks that first game, and the Knicks players are gonna be looking at the Celtics getting their championship rings and gonna be like, "You know what? This is our season to get this championship, and we're gonna fight for it." I believe that the Knicks are going to beat the Celtics on opening night. Like, I already know they are going to beat them because knowing after looking at them getting them rings, I know that Brunson and the crew are all gonna be like, "You know what? Let's use this as motivation to go after the championship." Because I really want the Knicks to win this year. Even if they don't win this year, they always got next year and a couple other years as well. But right now, the Knicks are much closer to winning a championship now than later. So this season, in terms of them, like, like what record they'll have, I feel like they'll have like maybe about close to 60 wins, like a slight improvement of last season. But if no one doesn't get injured that seriously, I feel like the Knicks probably would be either the second seed again, or they can potentially become this first seed. Like, we don't know how far this group will go, so I am confident that they will compete in the East and they will make a statement in the NBA. For example, like I heard like recently that Thibodeau actually wants to utilize his bench more often this season. And that actually is a good point because in the past, Thibodeau has really been reluctant to use his bench. He has only used like players like, for example, Emmanuel Quickly and like other players like Quentin Grimes, who are no longer on the team, but they were former bench warmers who he relied on to do bench scoring. But now Thibodeau has a lot of options on the bench. He has Deuce McBride, he has Landry Shamet, he has Cam Payne, he has Precious Achua, he has Jericho Sims, even though he's kind of like a wild card, but I have a feeling that Sims will have a breakout season. Like he has a lot of options on the bench. He can even refer to some of the rookies like Tyler Kolek or Kevin McCullough Jr. or Errol Huckaporty or even Pacome Dadier, even though they say he's a little raw. But I feel like eventually, with the right leadership and mentorship, he may develop into a decent wing player in the future. So Thibodeau has a lot of options on the bench that he could utilize in certain games. Because I feel like with Thibodeau utilizing his bench more, that tells me that the Knicks do have a plan just in case if someone gets injured. I feel like when they looked at Anunoby's injury history as well, they're like, "You know what? Let's get a lot of these wing players to combat those issues." Like when, for example, like when Anunoby does get down with the injury, you have Mikal Bridges, who is the NBA's current Iron Man. He can replace Anunoby when Anunoby goes down with injury. Also, the Knicks also have they just recently signed another wing of the name TJ Warren. Everybody probably remembers him from Phoenix and also the Pacers, like during the bubble. TJ Warren was dropping like 30 points, 50 points, 60-point games in the bubble. People say his bubble stats were legendary. Well, clearly, obviously, that was like 4 years ago. So he clearly is not the same player he was. But I feel like he can be that veteran presence who can lead the Knicks and teach them like all the stuff that he has gone through in his career because he too had had a injury prone career as well. But I feel like he can be that veteran presence to motivate the Knicks because Knicks right now currently don't have that veteran presence. So I do believe that yeah, the Knicks do have a lot of pieces. Like they're a deep team. Like I do believe that they can make some noise this season in the NBA. Well, yeah. So the thing about the Knicks is that I've grown up watching them from back in the time with Carmelo Anthony. Like when Carmelo was on the Knicks, I was like, man, the Knicks actually do have a good team. Cause I remember the best Knicks team that I grew up watching was 2012 to 2013 Knicks roster. Which of course, that team, they ended up being the 2nd seed in the East. Like, they had not only just Melo, they had Tyson Chandler, Iman Shumpert, J.R. Smith, Steve Novak, they had Jason Kidd. They also had a decent bench, like, they had Marcus Camby, they had Quentin Richardson, 2 players who used to play in the Knicks back in the day. They also had, like, other players like Chris Copeland and James White. Like, they had a solid team, but obviously they could have made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, but they were playing against a very strong Indiana Pacer team. So, but this current Knicks roster right now, I feel like that team could surpass that former roster because we have built a foundation of players who know each other and know how to play with each other. So that's how I know the Knicks are probably going to make some noise this season. And all I can say is get ready for it. Well, right now, I'm going to be talking about the Brooklyn Nets. Obviously, the Brooklyn Nets are still recovering from the trade that they did when they traded away Mikal Bridges to the New York Knicks. Well, in their defense, they feel like they kind of, in a way, had won that trade because they got all of the Knicks' first round picks. But let me be honest to you. Let me be honest with you guys. Those picks don't mean anything to the Knicks. And the Brooklyn Nets, they're not gonna get no, like, top 10, top 15 picks from the Knicks. They're gonna be getting, like, all them first round picks gonna be, like, in the 20s. So, they're not gonna get the best players out of those picks, but they can use those picks in a later deal if they wanna get a certain superstar-like player on their team. Well, in terms of this season for the Brooklyn Nets, I feel like it's gonna be a rebuilding season. Like, they're not gonna make the playoffs, obviously. Well, it depends on whether Cam Thomas can lead the Nets like Jalen Brunson, but I kinda do not see that happening. The Brooklyn Nets need a lot more help. Their bench is still pretty young. Like, also another issue with the Nets is that they just fired their coach, so they got a new coaching staff. Also, they're still dealing with the Ben Simmons issue, like, can Ben Simmons perform in a high level? I just saw the media day, Ben Simmons was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm 100%, like, I'm gonna be ready to play this season." And it's like, part of me is like, "Are you really ready to play like how you were playing back when you were supposedly in your prime?" Like, we have not seen Ben Simmons play at a high level since 2021 in the playoffs when the Sixers were playing against the Atlanta Hawks. That game 7 was probably the worst game I've ever seen Ben Simmons play, because there was a play where I was just shaking my head where he he was posting up, I think it was like Gallinari, and he managed to get open for a dunk, but he ended up passing the ball to his teammate instead of dunking on Trey Young, and I'm like, "Are you serious?" Like, you literally got scared of dunking on a small man just to pass the ball to an open teammate. So when I was looking at it, I was like, "Man, Ben Simmons, you're over because of this." And clearly, I feel like he has not recovered from that time. So I feel like part of Ben Simmons' issue is really mental. Like, he feels like he's going to fail, so that's why he doesn't play that aggressive like how he did back in Philadelphia. Yes, he has shown some flashes of it in Brooklyn, but I he hasn't really proven to anyone that he can still play at that high level. Because I feel like this season is a make or break season for Ben Simmons. Like, I feel like this is his last chance to prove to everyone in the NBA that he's still a good player. Like, if he doesn't show out, like, play like how he played in Philadelphia or even better, I feel like he's gonna find himself outside the NBA or maybe even overseas. But I recently heard that he has been working on his three-point shot. Well, let me tell everybody all of this. Ben Simmons has been working on his three-point shot for multiple years. Ever since he was in Philadelphia, he has been he has been shooting around in the gym, telling people, "Oh yeah, I'm working on my three-point shot." When the season comes, he does not attempt a single three-point at all. And I'm like, then why are you practicing three-point shooting but you don't even want to utilize it in a game? So it's like when I look at that, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you working on your shooting, but you don't wanna shoot. Like, you should be working on your post game or those other stuff, but you're trying to be a shooter now? Like, it's a little too late for that, bruh. Like, you should have been working on your shooting since you first came into the NBA. Well, obviously, I kinda have said enough about Ben Simmons. Like, I wish him all the best this season. I hope he can recover from all the personal demons he's had and potentially help the Nets. make it to the playoffs because I do wanna see a Knicks versus Nets playoff series. Like, if the Nets do make it as, like, the first not the first, the 8th seed, and maybe the Knicks as the first, I would really wanna see a Knicks versus Nets playoff series. Like, we already know what's gonna happen. The Brooklyn Nets are not gonna win a single game. They're gonna lose every single game. It's gonna be like a sweep because I remember last year, back when Mikal Bridges was on the Knicks, back when Mikal Bridges was on the Nets, I remember when the Knicks were playing the Nets back in I think it was, like, in January, it was for Rivals Week, and it's like, Bridges, he was like even though they were playing in Barclays, he felt like they were playing an away game because their own fans were booing them and cheering for the Knicks. That's how you know the Knicks have ruled over the Brooklyn Net fans, because the Brooklyn Net fans know that the Nets have no chance at beating the Knicks. And obviously, New York is a Knick town. It's not the Brooklyn Nets town because if I'm being honest, the Nets were in New Jersey but they end up moving to Brooklyn. So they're the Knicks are forever going to be, you know, the superior over the Brooklyn Nets. So yeah, that's basically how it's going to be. Well, obviously, I have, in a way, reached the conclusion of my episode today. Yeah, I know a lot of you guys probably were wondering, am I gonna go a little longer? Well, obviously, I didn't have a lot to say today, so next week, I'm going to be talking about the preseason and if who is going to be a preseason standout and who has a better chance at making the roster. I heard that Landry Shamet potentially has a better chance to make the roster. Question is, who else is making the roster and who's going to get cut? Well, this is the end of the episode. Um, you are listening to Mike Talks NY Sports. I'm your host, Michael Walters, reporting from WIUR. Have a good day.